Hello, this is Will Wertz, author of Beware the British East India Company Towards an Alliance Between the United States of America, Russia, China, and India to Finally Dismantle the British Empire, and also co-author with the late Lyndon LaRouche of the book The Four Powers. What I want to address today is the significance of the recently discussed Core 5 concept. On December 9, 2025, Megan Meyers, a staff reporter for Defense One, reported that a draft version of the U.S. national security strategy proposed the creation of a Core 5 group made up of the United States, Russia, China, India, and Japan. She wrote, quote, "Over the summer, President Trump made headlines when he lamented the expulsion of Russia from the Group of 8, now the Group of 7, as a very big mistake. He even suggested that he'd like to add China to form a Group of 9. His national security proposes taking this step further, creating a new body of major powers. The strategy proposes a Core 5 made up of the United States, Russia, China, India, and Japan, which would regularly meet, as the G7 does, for summits with specific themes. First, on the C5's proposed agenda, Middle East security. On December 18, in an interview with the U.S. media company Newsmax, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko discussed what the world could expect should the United States succeed in establishing a Core 5 group. Quote, "I have heard from the media that Trump is ready to create a bloc of 5 states, Russia, China, Japan, the United States of America, and India. If this union is established, the world will be completely different, and this will happen in a short period of time. Probably after Europeans failed to understand what Trump wants, Trump turned to Asia, because that is the main center of future development." This idea of the Core 5 has been widely recognized as very similar to the concept presented by the late Lyndon LaRouche of the necessity of arriving at a 4-power agreement between the United States, Russia, China, and India to create a new Bretton Woods system. In fact, Google Artificial Intelligence reports that the Core 5 mirrors LaRouche's proposal in several ways. First, LaRouche frequently proposed reorganizing global finance and diplomacy around a 4-powers alliance, a direct precursor to the Core 5. Again, according to Google AI, like the proposed Core 5, LaRouche's proposals focused on the world's most influential population, economic, and military centers, regardless of their political systems. LaRouche argued that only a partnership between the United States, Russia, China, and India could successfully dismantle the British imperial financial system and implement a new Bretton Woods. 3. The Core 5's reported aim to address global security and economic stability mirrors LaRouche's peace through development doctrine. 4. LaRouche's followers consistently attempted to influence the U.S. executive branch, specifically the National Security Council, during the 1980s. The recent surfacing of the Core 5 represents a modern iteration of the great power diplomacy his movement spent decades promoting. That's Google AI. A further indication of the influence of this idea within the Trump administration is his Board of Peace. It should be noted that Russia, China, India, and Japan have been invited to join this Board of Peace. President Trump has said that President Putin agreed to join. President Putin has said he is considering the invitation and offered to contribute $1 billion from Russian assets frozen in the U.S., which would presumably be unfrozen once a peace deal is reached in Ukraine. On January 20, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko signed an agreement to join President Trump's Board of Peace. I believe that even though the concept of the Core 5 does not appear in the final document, its appearance in an earlier draft shows the continuing influence of LaRouche's ideas. I would encourage members of the BRICS to study the U.S. National Security Strategy document and a speech delivered at the recent Davos summit by the director of the United States Trade Representative, Jamieson Greer. The National Security Strategy states as follows: after the end of the Cold War, American foreign policy elites convinced themselves that permanent American domination of the entire world was in the best interest of our country. They placed hugely misguided and destructive bets on globalism and so-called free trade. They lashed American policy to a network of international institutions, some of which are driven by outright anti-Americanism and many by a transnationalism that explicitly seeks to dissolve individual state sovereignty. It is the core interest of the United States to negotiate an expeditious cessation of hostilities in Ukraine in order to stabilize European economies, prevent unintended escalation or expansion of the war, and reestablish strategic stability with Russia, as well as to enable the post-hostilities reconstruction of Ukraine to enable its survival as a viable state. The Trump administration finds itself at odds with European officials who hold unrealistic expectations for the war, perched in unstable minority governments, many of which trample on the basic principles of democracy to suppress opposition. Among the policies for Europe, the Trump administration should prioritize, according to the National Security Strategy, are ending the perception and preventing the reality of NATO as a perpetually expanding alliance. We seek good relations and peaceful commercial relations with the nations of the world without imposing upon them democratic or other social change that differs widely from their tradition and histories. The world's fundamental unit is and will remain the nation state. Jameson Greer's speech at Davos, entitled The Hamiltonian Economic System That Too Many Have Forgotten, makes clear that the U.S. under President Trump has rejected the British system of political economy of Adam Smith and Thomas Malthus, and has fully embraced the American system of political economy, enunciated by Alexander Hamilton, Friedrich List, and Henry C. Carey. As Jameson Greer states in his speech, on December 5th, 1791, America's first Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton, delivered his report on manufactures to Congress. In that report, Hamilton articulated a plan for the United States to shake off its economic dependency on the British Empire. By the time of the Civil War, the American system had built up the beginnings of the American industrial machine. However, American ingenuity and productivity was held back by Southern slavery, which kept the country tied to an exploitative and backwards planter class that pushed ceaselessly for free trade. The South at that time preferred a colonial model for its own economy, playing the role of commodity producer for European empires. In contrast, Abraham Lincoln said, "My politics are short and sweet. I am in favor of a national bank. I am in favor of the internal improvement system and a high protective tariff." Henry C. Carey was an influential advisor to Lincoln. Carey argued that tariffs were essential to create what he called a harmony of interest. In his view, growth in the domestic market should create more and better jobs for regular people, who then spend their newfound money on domestically produced goods, which then further grows the economy in a positive cycle. Carey believed in the dignity of labor and was a passionate opponent of poverty and exploitation. His work for the Union cause helped dismantle slavery at home. But Carey realized that American abolition of slavery was not enough. Carey attacked the colonialism of European empires like Britain, France, and Spain. In the middle of the 19th century, a German-American economist named Friedrich List developed a comprehensive and influential theory of economic development that helped spread the American system around the world. List emphasized the importance of strategic trade measures to cultivate what he called the aggregate productive powers of a country over time. As I have stressed, the new Bretton Woods system must be based on these American system ideas of Hamilton, Friedrich List, and Henry C. Carey, and must reject the free trade, zero growth Malthusian policies of the British system. Such a system must be created by the Four Powers, or the Core Five, Four Powers plus one. Once it is created, other sovereign nations may join. I urge the BRICS nations to be open to these revolutionary ideas. Thank you for your consideration, and have a good day.